Okay. All right. So I'm going to share my screen. And so what's your name?
Brad.
Brad. Okay, good to meet you. Brad, I'm Stephen Roth, and I'm going to be demoing the ResLoad-J app. Do you actually have the app itself, or you kind of looking
Yeah,
at?
we
Oh, you
do.
do. Great. Okay. So, this was going to be more of kind of informal training, not so structured. So, I'm willing to, if you want me to go over some specific items in the app that you may need some clarification on, we can start with that, or I can kind of give a brief overview of the app, then we can go into, some personalized demoing.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
whatever
let's
your
start
thoughts.
with that.
Start with that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this is, as you know, the HVAC ResLoad-J app is it's an iPad app, and it is based on ACCA Manual J8. It is approved by ACCA, has been for almost 10 years now, or actually over 10 years. And it performs peak cooling and heating load calculations for residential and small commercial facilities. And what you see on your screen here, I'm actually running this on my MacBook. And in fact, the app does run on the MacBook. This is new within the past year.
Oh,
So if you have a MacBook, you can actually run it on your MacBook, but it also runs on the iPad. All right. So the way this app works is you create projects, and usually a project is a home. And then when you create a project, then that list of projects is on the left. Then on the right are all your input parameters. And depending upon which tab you select, main tab or sub tab here, determines which inputs are displayed. So there's two main modes. There's the block load mode and the room by room mode. So the block load mode means you treat the home as one big block. These inputs aren't so concerned with the individual rooms in your home under the block load mode. And this is where you enter all of your walls, roofs, doors, ceilings, floors, windows, and all that information as if the home were one big block. And then it will calculate that peak load. And that's actually how you size your equipment according to that block load.
right.
However, you can also do room by room. And what the room by room is good for is sizing, the ductwork or the diffusers for individual rooms. And the nice thing is you define all your constructions in the block load, and you can reuse those constructions in the room by room mode. Now, the nice thing about this tool is you can do the block load, but you don't have to do a room by room. You only have to do it if you want to size, if you want to know what the airflow is for a room, or how many diffusers you need to put in a room or whatever. So really, the main goal of this app is you need to use it out in the field, right? And you want to get things done relatively quickly. And most of the time you want to do a block load because you want to size that piece of equipment. You want to know how many tons of cooling and heat in BTU per hour of heating you want. So that's really the goal of the block load. But you can also do room by room. So within the block load, you have for sub tabs, project, envelope, window, and skylight. Oh, looks like we have someone else joining us.
Well,
All right, Randall, can you hear us?
Finally, yes.
Okay, awesome. So we have a couple of people online here. We just started the demo.
your office is too much.
So yeah, we just started the demo, and I just kind of been giving a brief overview of it. So the way we're going to structure this is I'm going to give a kind of an overview of the app, and then we can go into like specific Q&A that you may have on certain features of the app.
Okay.
And why don't you guys, if you don't mind, muting yourself just so we don't hear background noise, because obviously the more people we have on the call, the more background noise we're going to have. And if you have a question while I'm talking, feel free to unmute and ask a question. All right, so what we were going over is I was just talking about creating projects and some of the categories of inputs. So within the block load, you have project inputs, which are kind of your overall inputs for the project, envelope, where you define your outdoor walls, outside walls, your roof, your floors, windows, obviously you define all your windows, and then skylights. In the room by room, same thing. You define the properties for each room, then the envelopes, windows, and skylights for each room. And as I mentioned before, all the constructions that you defined under your block load, you can reuse in your room by room. All right, so let's look at an existing project here. And you can actually create new projects by clicking the plus button. And the nice thing about this app is you can copy existing projects. So if you have homes that are kind of similar, you can always copy that home to a new project and reuse that information and change it accordingly. So it really saves a ton of time. Plus, you can create templates. So if you kind of reuse, if you kind of service a bunch of homes that are similar to one another, you can create a template and copy and reuse that over and over again. So once again, you don't have to re-enter data from scratch. All right, so let's select an existing project. And then as you select each project, you'll see the input parameters on the right change. So I'm not going to go through every single input parameter. There's a lot to go over, but I'll highlight some of the more important ones. So for your project inputs, the most important thing here is your weather data. So if you select that little caret, up pops the weather data form. You select the state and the city that's closest to where you live. It automatically fills in the weather data for that city. And if you want, you can also override this. This data comes from ASHRAE weather data. And it's about, I think, 15 years old. So if you think some of these values are a bit low, especially considering, it seems like things are getting warmer out there, you can always up your temperatures. So, but it's your call. And once you override it, it will only override it for the specific project, not for every single project going forward. All right. And then down here is where you fill out, you enter the square feet of the home. And the nice thing about this app is it has a couple different kind of user interface elements where you can enter values. You can actually, put your finger inside it. And actually, since this is the MacBook, it's not popping up the keyboard, but I'm going to display the keyboard. So let me see how that works. Hold on. Let's see. I don't think. Yeah, it's not displaying the keyboard. Not sure why. Anyway, on your iPad, it would display a keyboard. But obviously, since I'm working on my MacBook, I'm just going to type something in using my keyboard on the MacBook. So you can always enter a value directly into an input. You can also move a slider control. And as you see, as you move your slider, you can see the values change. Now, another thing too is I'm going to erase the value in this. Why is that not working? This keyboard, hold on. Oh, there we go. Okay, so you'll see that this value is now maroon, and what that means is it's a derived value. So usually you're going to cool and heat the same floor area. So as you move your slider, you can see that as you move your cooling, it moves your heating. So that means it's derived, but you can always override it. So if I go in here and change it, I can always change it, say only 1,000 square feet of my floor area is heated. You can do that too. Let's see, this is, there we go. Okay, so now you can see it's not maroon anymore, so it's not overridden. Or it is overridden. It's not derived. And then another feature down here is our appliances. So you can add all different types of appliances, and obviously those do contribute heat to your home: TVs, computers, dishwashers, heaters, dryers, and lots of different types of appliances. So you can, if you click plus, you can see a whole list of appliances here, and you can select it, and then input the quantities. And the nice thing is it will add it all up for you and then assign it to an internal load, but you can also assign them to specific rooms. So if you have one room which has a couple TVs or computers, you can assign them to that room, and you'll see how much heat it contributes to that room. So you'll notice here I have a little pie chart. This is kind of my output section, both cooling and heating. And you can see as I change my inputs, it affects obviously my outputs. So you kind of get an instant feedback of, say, how, when you change the total floor area, how is it changing my total load? So why is changing the floor area affecting my load? Well, you can see it changes my infiltration calcs and also my duct blower heat gain. And in some cases, it will affect ventilation, but that depends. So your infiltration and your duct and blower heat gain are dependent upon your floor area. So that's why it's changing your total cooling load. Here's heating. Then this thing's called an AED curve, a quick little calculator icon here, calculates what's called an AED curve, and this is a requirement of being approved by ACCA. And basically, it's a little chart that shows you your fenestration, meaning your window and glass door load starting from 8 a.m. all the way to the end of the day. So as you can see in this case, we're pretty even, but we kind of peak about 1 p.m. And then obviously as it goes later in the day and the sun sets, our solar load decreases. Now, the thing is, if we're ever above this yellow line, that means that you probably should have some type of VAV system because you're not adequately distributing the cooling load throughout the home. So a VAV system would be recommended. So that's why we're required to display this, because it visually shows you whether you should have a VAV system or not. In this case, you're okay. You can do, you'll be fine with a constant volume split system, heat pump, whatever. All right, so let's, if you want to go to the next set of inputs, just swipe. And here we can do our set points for cooling, heating, relative humidity. Down here, we start selecting our infiltration and ventilation. So in this case, let's look at cooling infiltration. So here we can select 3 different methods for infiltration. I don't want to go into the other ones. There's too many input parameters, and you can always read up about it in the ACCA Manual J8 handbook. And then in this case, you select how many exposures your home has, and the tightness comes from input that was previous on this screen. And it will automatically calculate the air changes per hour, your total CFM, and then do the cooling load calcs based upon that CFM. Same thing for heating. The only thing for heating is you also include the number of fireplaces, since many times you'll be using the fireplace in the winter, you'll have the flue open, so that does contribute to some infiltration. All right. Ventilation. So you can have the software automatically calculate your ventilation, and ventilation is calculated according to a number of factors, including your infiltration and your exhaust airflow. Or if you happen to know that a certain amount of airflow is coming in through your furnace, you can always enter that, say 50 CFM. So, or if there's no outside air coming in through your furnace, you can always enter 0. Duct. So this is not a manual D program, but it still does model a simple duct system for the purposes of heat gain and heat loss. So here are a bunch of parameters. I don't want to go through all this, but it allows you to basically describe your duct system, in this case, your supply duct system, and the surface area. And what it's going to do is it will calculate heat loss due to your duct system. And the main thing here is, if you have a really leaky, unsealed duct system, you're going to see how your heat gain increases pretty tremendously. So I'm going to change it to an unsealed duct system. Let's go back. So we're currently at 43. Now we're at 55. So it increased almost by a ton. Let me change that back. Do sealed and tested. Goes back to 44. Excuse me. All right. So you can model as many duct systems in your home as you want. You can also model both supply and return. And this is pretty important, because if you do have if you have a really sealed, well-insulated duct system, you don't have to worry too much. But if you have an uninsulated duct system that leaks, it's going to contribute a lot to both your heat loss and your heat gain. All right, I'm going to swipe again, and now we just see a screen that's kind of more detailed outputs. Includes a detailed breakdown of your cooling load and your heating load. All right, so we've looked at our project inputs. Let's go to our envelope. Envelope allows you to start entering any exterior elements like exterior wall, your roof, your floor, exterior doors, non-glass doors. And all the construction types come from the ACCA Manual J8 handbook. So you can add new walls or roofs or floors or whatever by clicking the plus button. You can copy. So if you happen to have a bunch of walls that are similar, but you want to change maybe the orientation, you can do that also. So I can show you that real quick. So here I have a plus button, copy from existing envelope. So if I want to copy, say A, click save, and you'll see it just added a wall labeled I, west wall. And I'll delete it. Oh yeah, another thing, a lot of people call us and say, how do you delete something? Well, all you need to do is swipe, and you see the little delete button. There you go. All right, so you select the wall on the left, and then on the right are your parameters. And here, like I said, all this information comes from the ACCA Manual J8 handbook, and there's literally hundreds of construction types. So in this case, we have an above grade wall. Then we select the orientation, and the orientation is mainly for the purpose of the windows that this wall hosts. That's really why we need the orientation. The wall, it doesn't matter in Manual J8 calcs. The orientation of the wall doesn't matter, but the window does. And you'll see under the window section where we actually host the window using these walls. Construction types. So like I said, there's literally hundreds of construction types, all from the ACCA Manual J8 handbook. Here we categorize them by frame, block, and alternative. And then within each, you can select a bunch. And as you select each one, you'll see the U values and the descriptions below. There's block, and then alternative are just ones that don't fall under the first two. Let's go back to frame wall. I'll just select one of these. And then what it will do is when you select it, it automatically fills in your U value and your CLTD group, which is your fenestration or your solar group. And you'll see these are maroon. This is maroon, meaning that's derived. So this value is derived from construction type. You can always override this. So if you happen to know the U value of your wall, you can go in here and override it. Same thing with your CLTD group. Then here you enter your wall width, enter your wall height. And obviously it multiplies the two to get your area, and it does the calculations, and it calculates your cooling heat loss and your heat gain. So as I move my little slider control here, you'll see how it changes my cooling load. And for heating, same thing. All right, so that's a wall. Let's look at a ceiling or an attic. So ceiling can encompass a bunch of things. So ceiling, and then construction type, we have under attic ceiling, a roof deck, or roof joists. So 3 categories, and within each are a bunch of selections. You can also model a floor. You can model a partition wall. So this would be adjacent to, this is an interior wall, but it's adjacent to a space that is not conditioned, like in a garage. And in this case, it displays the same construction types as your outside walls. The difference is you enter the temperature on the other side of that wall. So it does the heat loss, heat gain calcs. So yeah, that's kind of it for the envelope. And then once again, swipe and you get to see a breakdown similar to the previous screen. So now let's go to Windows. Windows, you can add as many windows as you want. Same thing, plus, click plus, you can add a new one or copy an existing one. Windows, there's a lot of parameters here because you not only have to input the parameters of the window itself, but also the shading, both internal and external. So the main thing though is you want to make sure that you assign your window to an existing wall. You want to put it on that wall because what the program does is, one, it assigns the orientation of that wall to that window. So in this case, west wall, this is a west window, but it also subtracts out the area of the window from that wall. So it gets a true calculation of, you know, how much of that area is wall heat loss versus how much of that area is window heat loss or heat gain. Construction number, basically you can select from single, double, or triple pane windows. It will and also frame construction. And based on those parameters, it automatically fills in your U value and your solar heat gain coefficient. See, these are maroon, so they're derived. But once again, you can override these. You know, if you get some new Anderson windows or other types, you'll always see the sticker that lists either the U value, the R value, and the SHGC value. You can always fill those in here. Window type, default bay or garden. Then in this case, we're assuming that you may have many windows that are the same dimensions. So here you just enter the area of one of the windows, say it's 10, 14 square feet. Then you can enter the quantity. And all it does is multiply these two numbers. So in this case, it would be like 28 square feet. Down here's your internal shading. So this would be like shades, blinds, and drapes. And then you enter the percentage that the shade covers your window. Here you select whether there's an insect screen, internal or external. Down here, you select whether there's a sunscreen. And then on the right here is ground reflectance. So if you're surrounded by grass, maybe it's not going to reflect as much sun as if it were surrounded by asphalt or tar and gravel. And then also you can enter the window height, the overhang and length and distance. And this does the geometry and calculates how much of your window is being shaded by that overhang. And then down here, it calculates the cooling and heating load for that individual window. Then as I select each window here, you'll see the parameters update. And you can add as many windows as you want. All right, skylight. Similar to windows. So you actually assign your skylight and you attach it to a ceiling. So if you defined a ceiling underneath your envelope, you attach that skylight to it, and this subtracts out the area. These are construction types for skylights. Curb construction. And once again, based on these parameters, it auto fills in your U value and SHEC, which you can override. Then you enter your area of that skylight. If you happen to have more than one, you can enter the quantity. So same thing. In this case, ACCA does not require shading input parameters for skylights, so we didn't enter it, and we've never had a request to do so. So that's why you don't see any shading. All right, so we've entered all our parameters for our block load. So now let's look at reports. So reports are this little pie chart icon. System reports. This is kind of an overview. If I swipe, these are checksum reports, showing you infiltration air changes per hour, sensible heat coefficient, cooling load density. Same thing for heating. Here's our block load breakdown by value and percentage for cooling. Here's for heating. Here's my room by room breakdown. We haven't looked at room by room yet, but we will. And here's the pie chart icons, pie chart report that we saw on the screen here. Same thing for heating. And the thing is here, you could do a couple things. You can air print if you happen to have a printer that connects via Wi-Fi. You can also mail these. And what happens is when you click this, it opens your little mail client, attaches these as PDFs, and you can mail them. Other reports, room by room, which I'll show you in a bit. Input reports, so all of your inputs are can be displayed as reports. This is actually a relatively new feature that we added in the past 6 months. So all of your inputs can now be displayed. And this may be required for your municipality. They're going to want to see the inputs and the results. They want to make sure there's no garbage in, garbage out. Email HTML report. I can't show this because in the iPad, in my MacBook, it doesn't open the mail client like an iPad. Anyway, this emails a CSV file. So you can open it in Excel, and it includes all of your inputs and output parameters. The email database, that's another feature, and that's more used for like if we're doing support and I need to look at a project from someone, I have them email me their database, and I can look at their project. And it's a great way if you want to do backups or if you want to send a project to someone else, or send your database, which includes all your projects, to someone else. All right, this eye icon is just settings. So for example, suppose, if you want to say, here. So if you want to, increase this value from 10,000 to say 100,000, you would go into the settings and change this to 100,000. So these inputs aren't used for this particular project here, the James residence. These are used overall through all the projects to change your max, slider control settings or max inputs. Also, you enter your company information, which is printed on reports. All right. So I've gone over the block load section. Before I move into the room by room, does anyone have any questions? And make sure you unmute yourself.
I'm good.
You're good?
I'm good.
Good. Wait, Randall, how about you?
So far, so good. Thanks.
Okay, awesome. All right, let's look at room by room. So as I mentioned, when you're out in the field, you always do your block load first because that's where you define all your constructions. Okay. If you want to do room by room, you can choose to, but you don't have to do it because, as I mentioned, you're out in the field, you want to confirm the size of that equipment. And the size of that equipment is determined by your block load, not by your room by room. Because what the room by room does is it calculates the peak load for each room. And those peak loads occur at different times of the day, depending upon whether your room's in the north part of the house, the south part, east, west. So you're not getting a true size of your equipment using room by room. But the advantage of doing room by room is you can see the individual load for each room, determine the airflow. So if you happen to be doing, some, retrofits on the ductwork or updates to the diffusers, you can indeed, size that ductwork for that room. All right, so room by room. On the left here, we have a list of all our rooms. You can add new rooms. You can copy rooms, just like for projects. And then as you select each room, on the right are all your input parameters. So under the room subtab here, kind of some overall parameters. Once again, under envelope, you select the wall, ceiling, and roof specific to that room. Same thing for windows and skylight. All right, so let's look at bedroom one. So bedroom one, on the right, I can enter the number of occupants. So if you want to, if you want someone contributing to the heat of the room, you can enter the number of people. If there's no people, if you don't, you can just enter 0. But probably the most important input on this screen here are your appliances. So if you want to, select, say, a color television, I'm going to click 1 and then click done. And you'll see that this television now is contributing 342 BT per hour to this room. So all of those appliances that you define down here in the block load, you can now start distributing throughout or amongst all of these rooms. And you can see how much heat they contribute to the room. Here, once again, we have instant feedback in terms of a pie chart. So you can see, how much cooling is occurring in this room and the breakdown of it, how much heating, and AD curve. So what's interesting is it plots individual AD curves for every single room. And obviously, these AD curves are going to change depending upon, whether the room's facing east, west, north, or south. All right, envelope. So we're going to define the envelope properties just for this room. Now, one thing I didn't mention in the block load section is you don't really care about internal walls other than partitions, which are adjacent to, say, unconditioned space, a garage. But all other internal walls you don't care about because, there's no heat loss across those walls. It's the same temperature on each side. So you ignore internal walls. You don't care about it. Same thing for rooms. The only walls and roofs and floors that you care about for rooms are the ones that are facing outside, or, if it happens to be adjacent to, say, above a garage that is not conditioned. So let's look at our west wall. So here we have a list of all the walls that we defined under our block load section. So if you remember what I was saying initially, is you do your block load section first, you define all your construction types, and then now you can access those construction types in the room by room section. So in this case, I'm going to select the west wall. Then all I'm doing here is I'm going to enter the square footage of that west wall that applies specifically to this room. So the bedroom. So I'm just saying 190 square feet. All right. We did that. Excuse me. South wall, same thing. We select south wall and we enter the dimensions, the area of that wall that applies to this room. Same thing for floor and ceiling. We select our attic, and the floor we select our passive slab. Now in this case, this is probably a second story room, so really we would only use a floor envelope on rooms that are on the first floor. Because once again, we don't care about floors in between your first and second because they're conditioned on both sides. All right, window, same thing. We select a window that we defined under our block load. Then we enter the area of that window that is applicable to this room. And it calculates our load. Same thing for south window. And then skylight. In this case, this room has no skylight. So let's look at the kitchen. Kitchen, you're going to have a lot of appliances. So in this case, we didn't define any dishwashers or toasters or anything, but we could have. And if we did, we would add them to this room. So they would define loads, cooling loads to this room. And once again, you select envelope. And we input any exterior walls that apply to this room, ceiling or floor. Same thing for windows. And in this case, let's add a skylight since usually kitchens have skylights. And I'll select the skylight here that we defined in the block load section. And then let's say the skylight area is 10 square feet. And you can see here's the load, cooling and heating. All right. And then same thing for family room. Do the same thing. And then you see, let's look at the AD curves for these different. So see how the AD curve changes? Kind of interesting. Every profile is different because some rooms face east, west, north, south. So, you know, it peaks. Sometimes a room load will peak in the morning, especially if it's facing east. Another room will peak in the afternoon if it's facing west as the sun sets. All right, so we've defined all our rooms. And you can see here, it displays your airflow for each room in the output. So this is really what you're concerned with, right? Is you want to know how much ductwork or what size ductwork you want to size for each of those rooms. Well, now here's your airflow that you've calculated for each room. And you also know your cooling load and heating load. And then in terms of the reports, I kind of showed you this already. Let me show you the room reports. So these go into real detail. So I select my office. It shows me a bunch of reports dealing with my office, including my AED curve. Go back. Go to kitchen, same thing. Total cooling and heating, a breakdown of each for cooling, heating, and my AED curve. And then also I can display all the rooms in one. And you can email those similar to what I mentioned before, where you click the envelope icon, opens your email client, and you can email these reports as PDFs. All right. That's kind of a quick overview, or more like a half-hour overview of the app. One thing I did not go over yet was the ResLoad-J Cloud. And what that is this actually allows you to synchronize projects to a cloud database, and you can share those with other technicians in your firm. So basically what happens is you create a login here, and every time you create a new project, you click sync, and it will actually send it to the cloud. And then if someone else in your firm is subscribed to it, they can receive this exact same project on their iPad if they have the app also. So it's a nice way to share projects. And it's called the ResLoad-J Cloud. And as an administrator, you can manage who gets to see what using the web interface. At carmelsoft.com, it's actually, you'll see a link to the Carmel Equipment Locator, because we use all the same database and logins as the Equipment Locator app. You can manage who gets to see what projects and which projects are synced. So if you want more information on that, let me know. All right, so I've kind of given you an overview of the app. Do either of you have, specific questions or specific things you want to see in the app that maybe I didn't touch upon?
I'm just curious on the room by room.
Yeah.
I'm holding my tablet here now, and I'm curious as to how you can get to the custom appliance loads and stuff. I don't have a, how do I get to that? Because I don't have any ability to do that. It doesn't look like. Mine just said appliance load BTUH and then input a number. I don't have that little carrot.
Oh, so at the top, do you see the name of your app? Does it say HVAC ResLoad-J?
Hey, dang it.
Or better yet, do you have a little calculator icon on the right?
Yeah, I got the calculator there.
What do you do? Don't you see a little carrot icon? Do you see that little icon?
It's not there. I'm in the room by room on the room tab, and where the appliance load is, it just wants me to input BTUs. It doesn't. There's no carrot there.
Oh, okay. I think I know what's going on. Hold on. Yeah. Okay. Because go under your project.
Okay.
And then you need to select custom, CUST.
Okay, so that will allow me to.
And then under that, you select the little carrot icon, and up pops this form. And this is where you start adding all of your appliances. And then after you've added those, then you go into your room by room, and you'll be able to select which ones you want to apply to that room.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, because mine just says apparently no one's ever used it on this because it's just blank. So
yeah, so that's what you need to do. Yeah, like if I select low, it auto fills in 1200. And if I go into my room by room, you can see, yeah, I have the same thing as you. I could just manually enter something here.
Okay.
Yeah. So you need to select custom.
Gotcha. Okay.
Any other questions?
Nothing's really jumping out at me.
Okay.
I mean, I've used this quite frequently, so
okay. Any feedback?
It's just there's just a lot to it, like all the different construction codes, and sometimes I feel like I am pissing in the wind or just guessing at one that I think is close.
Yeah, ACCA, they have a lot of constructions in that database because they want to cover all their bases, but they're also missing a lot of newer ones. I mean, that database is, I think, 15 years old, and they're missing a lot of concrete, because there's a lot of concrete homes now. They don't have anything related to that, which I'm hoping they come out with in Manual J8, which I think is going to come out in a couple of years, they said.
Okay.
But yeah, there's a lot missing, but yeah, it is a pretty comprehensive database.
That it is.
Any feedback that you have for us in terms of making something easier to use or something to change?
Not having to do it on the iPad would be ideal.
So I think you can, like I said, we have users actually using it on the MacBook. Okay,
I don't have one of those either. I have everything but, I use a Microsoft Surface.
Okay, so our apps do not work on Windows, just MacBook and iPad.
They don't work on an Apple PC either, right?
Well, Apple PC is a Mac. You're talking about a MacBook?
Well, I got not a MacBook, not a laptop style, no.
Because when you say Apple PC, what does that mean?
It means the big Apple screen sitting on my desk here.
But is it running Apple or Windows?
It's running Apple.
Oh, okay. I see. Okay. Yeah, it depends if you have the M1 chip, which I think is only in the MacBooks. So you'd have to look into that. I'm not sure.
This one's an older monitor.
Yeah, probably would not work. Okay. Any other questions or suggestions?
Nothing's really popping in my head at the moment for me.
Okay. All right. Well, let me know. My email is I could give out my email. It's sroth sroth@carmelsoft.com, same as our website.
Okay.
If you have any other questions for me, let me know.
Okay.
Randall, how about you? Do you have any questions or anything you want me to go over?
I would, because I carry an iPad, so it was beneficial to me. I was a little new to it, so what I'm going to try to do is complete one using my own home and maybe email it over to you to peruse over it and point out my mistakes before I go out on the road and use it.
Sure. Yeah, you have my email, right? Is that
Sure
so
do, yes, sir.
Yeah, so yeah, feel free to email me. That's fine.
Okay, that's about all I have for now, sir.
Okay, great. All right, so I think that's it. Hopefully I answered most of your questions. If you have any follow-up, please email me. And I will be posting this on the website, this recording, within the next couple of days. So if you want to watch it again, just come to our website and look for the ResLoad-J videos and you'll see it.
Okay.
All right, everyone. I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording.